Now, in Matthew chapter 25, he tells three stories in this chapter. I want to look at the middle one, all right? And we'll read those things together, those verses together. We'll start in verse 14. Oh, and let's see, we'll read down to at least verse 19, all right? Matthew chapter 25, verse 14 to 19. For the kingdom of heaven is as a man traveling into a far country, who called his own servants. Now let me stop right there, and there's a key word there. All right, so this is obviously a wealthy man in the Latin culture. That is something that is very, very well understood. He is like the dueño. He is the patron is what they call him. He's the one that looks after everybody else and takes care of them. They're faithful to him, and he takes care of them for life. All right? And so this man was going to take a trip into a far country, and so he called all of his own servants. All right? It's very important we understand that he is dealing with people that knew him very well. All right? These are the ones that he associated with all the time. He called his own servants, and he divided unto them all of his goods. And unto one he gave 5 talents, to another 2 talents, and to another 1 talent. So what's wrong with that picture? Can one of you young people tell me what's wrong? There's 3 of you, so let's say I took these 3 and I gave you 5 and you 2 and you 1. It's not even. All right. So what we say, well, hang on a minute, that's not fair. That's not fair. Because he got 5, I only got 2, and she's punching both of them out because she said, I only got 1. It's a typical thing, male taking advantage of a female, and so they all get the big numbers, and I get 1 lousy thing. Here's the problem. His 5 talents are cleaning the floor and emptying the trash and all this, and his is playing basketball, and she's a rocket scientist. So which 1 talent would you prefer? All right? You see what happens is we look at that, and instantly in our culture, our hackles get up and we say, now wait a minute, that's not fair. You're going to have to make this fair. You can take a couple from his, that gives him 3. And he's got 2, so we give these 2 from him to her, so she has 3 and 3 and 3 and 2. That's much more balanced. But see, that wasn't God's plan. It says that he gave 5 to one and 2 to another and 1 to a third, and we go ballistic. I grew up, I'm child number 5 out of 6. I was a baby for 6.5 years, and then some little retarded girl came along and spoiled that for me. But there were 6 of us, and we were poor. I mean, we were really poor. And for us to get candy was something highly unusual. And my mom would tear it open, and she would line us all up, and we'd put our hand out, and she would come, and she would just pour some in each hand. All right, all the way down to the 6. What is the first thing that I did when I had my hand full of candy? He's a man after my own heart. The first thing I did was counted it. You see, I had a sister that was a year and a week older than me. She was always bigger than me. She is still bigger than me. Oh, sorry. She was always bigger than me, and she took advantage of me. I was the runt. I mean, I was a scrawny little nothing. The smallest in my class. I struggled at everything I did. The only thing that was normal, well, that wasn't even normal size. The only thing that was full grown on me were my feet. When I was in 5th grade, my feet were bigger than my daddy's. I wore 9.5 and 10, and I only wear size 13 right now. So I look like Bozo. I'd come down to walk, and you'd see my feet coming 3 or 4 seconds before you ever saw me. And here's it, and it was crazy because I'd trip and fall over a change of color in the carpet. I mean, I just fell for no reason. Oh, what happened? Oh, nothing. It just happens, It's just part of it. All right? But my sister would chase me through the house, and she would tackle me and sit on me, and she had this hairbrush that was wooden handled, and she would beat me with that until I promised her I'd do what she wanted me to do. Then she would let me up. So there was a lot of competition. Everyone called me a retard, but she was brilliant. And so I had to outdo her. And you betcha the first thing we did, she and I both, we counted every piece of candy to see who had the most. And always she got more than me. And I'm saying, that's not fair. I got 7 and she got 9. And my mom said, well, I gave you whatever, and I did the same thing with her. Yeah, but that's not fair because she got more than me. She said, you don't want it? Okay, give it back. And I said, what do you mean? She said, well, I'll just take it all back. You don't have to have candy. No, I want candy. Okay, then enjoy what you have. You've been blessed with candy. Eat it. I said, but Mom, she said, look, I had you put your hands out and I filled your hands. They got more because their hands bigger. What do you say about that? I still didn't like it. In fact, if we're going to line up and divide out the candy, I'm going to count it still. In fact, I have a pretty good idea what kind of candy I got in my pockets, and I always have it, all right, because I like candy. And I take it with me everywhere. I have it in my truck. I have it in my suitcase. I have it in my backpack. I have it sitting on the counter at home. You think I'm lying? I'm not. I have candy everywhere because I like candy. Now, it may have something to do with me having a root canal yesterday. I'm not sure that probably didn't figure into it at all right? You see, the next verse says that he gave his servants, whom he knew, he gave them talents according to their abilities. All right? Now, if you give a 1-talent person 5 talents, it drives them crazy. It frustrates the daylights out of them because they don't know what to do with it. And the good master who knew them knew that. So he didn't burden them with extra talents. But here's what I want you to know. And young people, I want you to hear this. Every person that belongs to God was given a talent. Everybody. You say, oh, preacher, I don't know if that's true. It is. There is no one left out. We got a couple of boys here that at least used to play on a football team. I guess they're... Sorry, guys. It's a long story. You'll have to ask them about it. I used to love to play sports, but I'm built like a gorilla, all right? You think I'm lying? I'm not. My arms are way longer than my legs. My inseam is 30. And my sleeve length is 36, 37. And my neck is 18 and a half, 19. And tonight I can't get the button done because I'm swollen right here from that root canal. So I can't even button my collar. So I have to wear stack shoes to keep my knuckles from dragging the ground because my arms. So I'm all arms and legs. It came in real good when I was playing basketball because I could block anything. I mean, they'd do a hook shot and I'd be up over top of them and I didn't have much control, but I'd just swat my arm and I'd hit that ball and it'd go flying and everyone would cheer and I felt pretty good. And, you know, and then when I wasn't playing basketball, then my arms got in the way and I used to walk like this and I'd come walking in, you know, like this. And I was trying to hold my arms up because it felt like you were dragging down by my knees when I was walking in. And I'm like, oh, my word. But you see, we would play basketball, and I don't know how it is now, like if you go out on a public court down at a park, but we would all line up in a row, and we'd pick the 2 best guys out here, and they'd pick teams. And sometimes if there was a real difference between the top couple, we would say, okay, you draw a number between 1 and 10, and whoever got closest, they got first pick. But then the next guy would get 2 picks because he didn't get the very best guy. But then after that, it'd go 1-1 until everyone was gone. Well, I was this little deformed little boy that was short with long dangly arms and big feet. If you needed a hard foul, I was the man to give it. I could take their head off and not even mean to. If you needed someone to trip the running back before he crossed the goal line, I'd just stand out there in a normal stance and my foot was long enough that they'd trip over it, you know. But I'd love to play, and I'd get up along the wall and I'd say, pick me, pick me. And they'd go here and 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 here. And I was always one of the last ones or the last two. Many times the very last one. And I remember them saying something like this. They say, oh man, Stetler, we'd love to have you on our team, but then the teams would be uneven. Liar, you don't want me on your team. If you wanted me on your team, you'd already pick me. You didn't pick me because I'm no good. And I'm smart enough to know that. They said, well, man, just hang out here. And if someone else comes, then we'll draw numbers again to see which one is burdened with you, and we'll take the other one, you know. And I'd often say, oh, man, that's all right. I didn't really want to play anyway. But I did. I really did. I wanted to play just like everyone else. Listen to me, okay? Listen really closely. God never operates that way. He doesn't leave anybody standing along the wall. Nobody gets left standing along the wall. He chose you on purpose. Not because he had to, but because he loves you. And he has given you some ability that we need. All of us need. And this story of Christ fits perfectly with this parable that Christ told. Because God went away and he left all of his kingdom here on earth in the hands of those that loved him and served him and claimed to be Christians. Now, are all of us equally talented? No. There are some that are more talented. But he has equipped all of us with something that we can do and add to his cause and kingdom. I talked about last night the scripture where he asked Moses, Moses, what's in your hand? And Moses said, Lord, all I got in my hand is a stick. And God said, I need your stick. And if you give me your stick, I can do everything I plan to do through you just using that stick. And tonight, if I had to title this, I would title it like this: what are you doing with my talent? That's a question from God. He's asking you, what are you doing right now with my talent? Now, here's what you have to understand. All of us are a part of the same family. These all work for the same master. It wasn't a matter of competition. It wasn't a matter of showing off that I had more than you, although that is the normal human nature. If you don't believe it, you go in a family with a bunch of kids, and someone's going to be crowing all the time that they can do something that you can't do, you know. So that is a normal part of human existence, but it's not in this story. Because he doesn't ever compare you to someone else. Why can't you do what he does? Why can't she be like her? Why can't they do this? No, it's not that comparison at all. In fact, you read all of the Gospels and all of the story of Christ. Never one time does he hold you up in comparison to someone else. The only comparison is, he says, when you get to the end of this life, I'm going to hold my word up and the teachings of what I gave you, and this is how I want you to live, and your life will be compared to that to see if you did what I asked you to do. That's the comparison, but it's never between you and me. You see, the thing that is important is not if I have as many or more or fewer talents than the next person. What is important is, what did I do with the talents that I had? And here's the common problem. So I have one talent, and I'm looking out over this group of people, and I'm saying, man, I'm not going to do anything. That one's got 5, and that one's got 5, and that one's got 3, and that one's got 7.5, and that one's got and there's not anything this one can't do, and I got this one little thing, and that's the only thing I can do. God made me really talented. He really did. He made me so I could do something that my 3 brothers and 2 sisters couldn't do. I can talk like a duck. Oh, now, don't laugh until you heard it. I bet you can't talk like a duck. Not only can I talk like a duck, I can talk like a duck in 2 languages. This is a bilingual duck. And I can talk like a duck so you understand it. Now, with swallowing in my mouth, I don't know if that's going to work. Let's see. You want to talk in English first?
Hello. How are you doing tonight? It's so good to see you.
All right? I bet you can't do that. You see, God made me talented. Let's try that in Spanish. All right? How many of you speak Spanish or understand Spanish? Okay. You be the judge. We got a whole bunch of gringos, a couple of Hispanics, and a couple in between. Okay, let's try it in Spanish.
Hola, ¿cómo estás? Qué gusto verle. Adiós. Hasta luego. Nos vemos.
Did you understand in Spanish? All right. Now, anyone want to try that? Can you talk like a duck? You say, "Oh, preacher, get out of here." No. Because I spent 10 years working in missions work in Mexico. I would go into town with a bag of dum-dum suckers and a bilingual duck. And I'd pass out suckers to kids. What I found out that adults like paletas también. All right? So it wasn't long until the adults were coming, I want a sucker too, And then I'd start talking to the kids like a duck, and they'd get real big-eyed, and they'd look scared. And I'd say, in Spanish, "Now I can talk like a duck in Spanish too. You want to hear?" "Yeah." So I'd start talking to them in Spanish like a duck. And pretty soon I'm walking down the center of town. I got my bag of suckers, and I got 15 kids behind me. And they're all saying, "Talk funny again, talk funny again." Do that again. I was in San Gabriel Mixtepec. That's south of Oaxaca City. It's only about 120 miles, but the roads are so bad it takes about 6.5 hours to get there. So I was down in that village, and I had gone through town, and all the kids knew me. I would go through there, and every time they would see me, they called me Hermano Pato. That's Brother Duck in Spanish, all right? They call me Brother Duck, and I would get off the bus coming from Oaxaca City, and I would get out, and I would grab my suitcase, and the bus stopped right by a prepa, it was like a middle school right there on the corner, and I would get off. I'm this jolly white giant, I'm the only gringo in town, and I'm bigger than everybody. And these kids would look up, and they would start shouting, "Hermano Pato," from the public school. I would go up to Bougainvilleas, way up on top of the mountain, and the principal came and said, "Listen, can you see our kids and talk with them and give them suckers? We're going to have to shut down school because all they're doing is standing at the window saying, 'Hermano Pato, Hermano Pato,'" and they would take recess at a strange time so they could come see Brother Duck. And the teachers and the principal would come. Now, they didn't care about the duck so much as they cared about the suckers. All right? But they would come. But I tell you what, we went to church. Our church down there in San Gabriel is our largest church. It'll seat about Well, in U.S. standards, it would seat about 250, 300, and I have seen over 700 in it down there, all right? And so I was there. I was supposed to speak that night, and here came this family down, and the pastor was saying, oh, this is a new family. I've never seen them. And I looked out, and I said, well, I know the kids. I said, I was talking to them today, and they came up, and the pastor went out to greet him, and he shook their hand, and the first thing out of their mouth said, we came to see Brother Duck. The mom and dad came to church. Their kids talk so much about Brother Duck. The mom and dad came to church to see Brother Duck. And you know what happened? They heard this story about the God that loved them and came here to take their place and give his life to free them and break the chains of sin. And they got gloriously converted. And they both are Sunday school teachers right now. The lady is the best Sunday school teacher I have ever seen in Mexico. She normally runs about 35 to 40, and the kids just love her. And she came to church the first time to see Brother Duck. All right? Now that's a little embarrassing, quite frankly. You know, my one big thing is I can talk like a bilingual duck in a foreign land. But if it helps someone find Jesus, man, I'll talk like a bilingual duck all day long because I want people to hear this message. All right? Now, here's what I want you to see, and I'm going to try to let out a little early tonight. That's no promise. You have to understand that. I said I'm going to try. My wife said, yeah, you're the tryingest man I know. Here's the thing. The master went away, but he said, I want you to guard my things while I'm gone, and I want you to use them in a profitable way. All right? So the master went away on a far journey, and he was gone a long time. And the one with 5, he said, well, I don't really know what to do, but he went out and began to work with those talents and those things that had been given to him, and he worked and worked and worked. And when the master came back, he had taken 5 talents, and when he had to give an account to the master, he had 10 talents. So he had doubled what he had. All right? 100% increase. That's pretty good. Now, and the master came by and he said, okay, what did you do with my 5 talents? Let's see. What's your name? Justin. You had 5 talents. And so he comes back and said, Justin, what did you do with my talents? And he said, well, I worked hard. I knew that you would demand some kind of answer. I worked hard. I used those 5 talents, and I was able to gain 5 more. And the master got angry and said, you dumb idiot, why didn't you make me 10 talents? Is that what he said? No. No. There was no condemnation. There was nothing negative. Nothing at all. In fact, he said, well, Justin, that's good. I gave you 5. You doubled it. 100% profit. That's wonderful. Well done, thou good and faithful servant. That's good. All right, what's your name, bro? Mario Gordito? I like gorditas. Okay, Mario. All right. He said, Mario, dame cuenta. Give me an account of your 2 talents. And he said, well, I worked hard, and I used them to the best of my ability, and I was able to get 2 more talents. So you had 4 to give to the master. And he said, well, you big dummy, why couldn't you do like Justin? He got me 5. You only got me 2. Is that what he said? No, that's not what he said. There was no comparison at all. None. He said exactly to him what he said to the other one. He said, you did a good job. I'm proud of you. Well done. I gave you 2. What was his rate of return? Exactly the same as Justin's. All right? Because both of them did their best with what they had and brought the best return back. How do you get better than 100% return? All right? In God's eyes, They were equal. All right? We look at it and said it's not fair because he's got 5 and he's got 2. But God said, no, their ability is this, and I gave them exactly what they could handle, and they had exactly the same response with the same thing because I gave it to them according to their ability. So we get to the other one. What's your name? Diana. I'm going to pick on you a little bit, Diana, okay? You still be my friend afterwards? I'll give you some candy. Here you go. All right. Diana said, all of that money, and I got 1 lousy quarter. That's all he gave me. 1 talent. And that old codger, I know that he's going to expect something in return. He's a mean old geezer. And all he gave me was this 1 stinking coin. And when he comes back, he's going to expect me to have something for him. And she said, I know what I'll do. If I lose it, it's my head. I'm not going to do that. So she took that 1 coin and put it in a cloth and wrapped it all up and went out behind the barn. And she got down and she dug a hole. And she put this way down in that hole so no one could see it. And she buried it, and then she spread leaves over it, and she walked out. There was no one looking, and she was so happy. She said, well, hey, I took care of that. I have guarded it forever. I know it's there. When he comes back, voila, there's his coin. All right? And sure enough, when he came back, she heard he was coming, so she looked around. No one was there. She went out, and she dug that up, and she opened it up, said, yep, there it is. In fact, it's still pretty shiny. She'd polish it up. Look at that. Not a scratch on it. It's just like new. And when the master came back and said, what'd you do with my talent? She said, here it is. You like that? If anything, it looks better now than it did when you gave it to me. There's not a scratch on it. In fact, I buried it when no one was looking, and not a single person even knew I had that talent. Nobody knew. And here it is. And the master comes unglued, and this time it's for real. It's the only negative comment in the whole story. And he looks at that person, not her. He looks at that servant. He said, you wicked and lazy or slothful servant. You knew that I would expect something in return. I don't want that new talent. I don't want it all shiny and polished. I don't care if it's marred and twisted and bent and blood spattered because you've been out in a battle. You've been working with that talent. That's what I gave it to. I didn't call you to bury it in the ground. But Lord, no one even knew I had it. Shame on you. I gave it so you could tell everybody that you had it because I was coming back and I expected you to do something profitable with the talent that I gave you. Now, there comes a day when the master comes back. And it's not going to matter whether we have 10 talents or 4 talents. But it is going to matter if we only have the one original one. You see, he's not comparing. He's not in a competition. What he is looking for, and young people, this is the thing you need to understand. He's looking for a friend that will be faithful, completely faithful to him. I gave you a talent, expecting you to use it for my glory. And if you use it, my answer is well done. And if you don't, what he said, you're a wicked, slothful servant. And he said, take him and cast him out into the darkness because he's unprofitable. All right? Now, I have no clue what talents God has given you. And I'm really not concerned with that. That's between you and God. But I'm very concerned about this question of what are you doing with God's talent? What have you done today? And let me talk to you young people. This is something you need to understand. We live in a world where it's dame, dame, dame. Give me, give me, give me, give me, give me. What I want to ask you is, what have you done today to help anybody? Well, nothing. Then you ain't used your talent. Because the abilities that God gives us, those are the abilities that make a difference for Him in the lives of others. To show His love, to show His mercy, to show His compassion. And if all you're saying is give me, give me, give me, or punching someone in the face if they don't give you what you want, then you got a problem. All right? He's saying, I gave these things to you because I want to use you to help someone else. So what have you done with my talent? You say, well, when this one's a superstar, it's sort of hard to be third and fourth and fifth in line. These boys that play football will understand that. If one of them is a starter and the other one on the depth chart is number 3, all right, that means 2 people have to break a leg before they can even get off the bench and touch a football. All right? That's hard to take. You're young, you're full of energy, you're strong, you have a passion to play. But remember, God doesn't leave you sitting on the sideline. When He gives you talents, He immediately brings you in the game and expects you to do something about it. Let me give you some things here in closing real quickly. There was a lady that when I lived in Alabama, she was in her 80s. She had had a passion for missions. She had been active in every church she had ever lived in. Her name was Virginia Vernon. All right, some of you may know Steve and Sonia Vernon. Some of the other Vernons, this is Grandma Vernon. And she lived on the campground in Pell City when I lived there. And she was old. She couldn't get around. She didn't have her license. She couldn't do a lot of things. I was going to take her to a wedding. And I went by and I knocked on her door just to make sure that she knew what time we were going to leave. And she didn't come to the door. But I could hear noise inside, so I knocked again, and finally she came to the door. And she said, she was sort of stooped, and she would say, "Oh, Brother Steve, so good to see you. Come in." And she said, "I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. I was in my praying room." And she took me into her prayer room. Now, here's what I want you to understand. On her wall, she had a map of the world, and she had these push pins that have a little colored round ball on the end of them, all different colors. And you could hardly see the map for push pins. And she said, every one of those pins represents some missionary that I'm praying for. And it was all over the world. That was impressive to me. But here's what blew me away. We lived 20 minutes outside of Birmingham. The Birmingham phone book is about 3 to 4 inches thick. And laying on her chair was a Birmingham phone book laying open. And on the 2 pages that I could see, there were all kinds of marks with a highlighter. And I wanted to ask, but I didn't want to intrude. And she said, I was just praying, doing my prayer time. And I finally said, I've got to find out. I said, Sister Vernon, what were you doing with the Birmingham phone book? She said, Steve, I'm old and I'm crippled with arthritis and I can't drive and I spend hours alone. A lot of times I can't sleep in the night because I'm in so much pain from my arthritis. And she said, I was asking God some way to show me some way that I could help His cause and kingdom. And she said, I looked over and saw the phone book, and I picked it up and I just flipped through it. And she said, there's probably hundreds of people whose name is in this phone book that never have anyone to pray for them. And she said, Lord, I want to be the one to pray for these people. That phone book had 2,700 pages. And she was on 1,921. and she had prayed for every name in that phone book. And she said, sometimes I'll run across the name and I'll pray for them, and that's basically it. But then I'll come to another one and the Lord will say, oh, she really needs prayer today. And so she said, I'd bear down and I'd spend half hour, 45 minutes praying for this name in the phone book. And I would highlight it and I would put a star by it, and any impressions God would give me, I'd write it out here in the margin. I flipped through that, and those 1,900 and some pages, they were just all marked up like my Bible's marked up. And she was praying through the Birmingham phone book for people that needed prayer that day and needed God. You say, all I got's one talent. Can you pray? That's a pretty big talent. I remember the time when I went right through the middle of a raid with los narcos in Mexico. There was about 30 people there, and as I came through, they just opened up just enough to let me go through. And I was saying, Lord, you're going to have to be a shield around me. And they were looking down in my car. They had automatic rifles. I was out on a deserted farm road out in Los Ranchos. I was all alone. I found out later that our national president was following. He said, Steve, when that group opened up and you disappeared in the middle, he said, I began saying, oh, God, help us. He's dead. We'll never see him again. But I'm here tonight in Oklahoma City because in the middle of that danger, there was someone that was praying for me. All right? Don't ever discount your talent. God has given, and He is expecting you to plug that into that picture to make it complete. Someone is depending on your talent. Let me give you one other one, and I'll quit. All right? This little change purse. One of my favorite places to go in Mexico was down, about 30 miles from Puerto Escondido, clear down in the southern region. Beautiful coastline. In fact, it's one of the top 3 places internationally for surfing. They have an international surfing competition down there. And you see those boys and girls riding those surfboards. I mean, 20-foot waves. It is just incredible. I just stand there like, wow. They just disappear, and then they suddenly come shooting out the other side, and they're going, they say a lot of times they're going over 100 miles an hour when they have harnessed that force that comes shooting out of that tunnel on the other side. It's incredible. But on the way, there's this little village. It's one of the poorest ones I would go to. They had a little chapel. It had been used as a barn and then as a storage shed. It had a dirt floor. It had adobe brick walls, and those adobe brick were about 2 feet wide and 18 inches long and about 3 inches thick. And they had one little window in the back and 2 little doors. And the only light right up in front, they had dropped one electrical cable down and had a socket on the end, and they had a 20-watt light bulb in it. And so when I would preach, I would have to hold my Bible up so I could get enough light with my bifocals to read what the Scripture was saying. I mean, poor, humble. And you would go there, and they always wanted to give some offering to God. And so the pastor that helped start that church, Brother Desi, he was there, and they would give him, a lot of times they'd give him a chicken. And they'd give someone else a bag of frijoles, black beans, whatever. Sometimes they'd give nopalitos. That's prickly pear cactus, all diced up, ready to eat, and it's delicious, unless it's boiled, and I hate it. And then it's like eating aloe vera raw. You know, it's slimy on the inside. But I would go there, and I would take my Mountaineer down there. I had a 99 Mercury Mountaineer, and we would fill it up. My brother-in-law, Mark Sankey, would drive, and Brother Desi would sit up front. We'd put 2 kids on the console, and we normally had 5 or 6 men and women in the middle. And then a couple of other single guys and myself and 2 teenage boys would sit in the back, and then we would put a couple of guitars. So we're just laying in this back thing holding these guitars, and they would put these crazy chickens in gift bags. They put them in there. So we're coming up through the dark mountain roads, just back and forth on top of it, and we'd hit a bump or something, and suddenly, right there in your ear, I said, get your head down there, you stupid chicken, and I'd stuff in, hold the top of that, and then I'd forget, and he'd do it again. Oh, just scare you. But there was an old lady, her name was Marta. She looked like a dried apple. I mean, her face was all shriveled up, real deep lines. She had just lived in the sun. They said that one of her daughters tied sticks together and made 2 little walls or 3 little walls. One side didn't have any wall, and then they took palm fronds and laid them over top, and that's where she lived. That's where she sat. That's where she slept at night. She was just little, all stooped over. She was barefooted. The calluses on her feet were 3/4 of an inch thick. Desi, the senior pastor, he said, I doubt if she's ever even owned a pair of shoes. I solved that. I took a box of chanclas, flip-flops down there. And it was so neat. She had one tooth down here that sort of went sideways, and she had one tooth right up here. That was the only 2 teeth. And I opened her and I said, Marta, I want you to choose first. And I laid all these things out. She chose pink, bright pink flip-flops that had a big plastic flower about that big on it. And she would put those on, and she would walk into things because she was looking at these flip-flops on her feet. And she'd run up to someone, and she'd say, look, and wanted you to see her chanclas. But that day, they gave Pastor Desi a chicken, and they gave me a bag of black beans, and they gave someone else some cactus. And I watched Marta, and she came up to me, and she said, Hermano, she said, oh, my heart is breaking. I want to give something to God, but I don't have anything to give. And she was looking at me, and I said, well, that's all right, Marta. I said, part of your offering is that you came to church to listen and hear, and maybe God will help you tell. She said, no, I want to. And suddenly she reached down inside of her shirt, and she pulled out this little change purse. And she said, I want to give God this. I was in Mexico 2 days ago buying vanilla. I have a case of it out in my truck if you want to see me afterwards. And the exchange rate right now is 20.2 pesos to $1. That's what it was on last Friday. She gave me this change purse, and there's a 10 peso coin, a 5 peso coin, a 2 peso coin, and a single peso. So it's 18 pesos. It's less than $1. But here's what you need to understand about this dollar. She said, here, hermano, this is my gift to Jesus. She said, it's all I have. Pastor Desi came up and he said, did Marta give you her change purse? And I said, yeah. He said, oh, and he began to cry. He said, oh, brother, that is the last penny she has on this earth. She has nothing else. And she gave her gift to God. I can't even touch this without weeping. But here's what I want you to understand. When we take the talent that he gave us and give it back to him, he's able to use even our one talent for good. About 3 or 4 months later, I left Mexico and came back to the United States. I was here 6 months, 7 months. I had 94 services in 7 months. I was just on the road. I was doing deputation work, raising our support. But I felt like the Lord specifically said, I want you to take Marta's change purse, and I want you to tell about her gift to me. And I did. It is less than $1, but she gave her pennies to God. And today, there are 2 brand new churches that are built and paid for and functioning with between 30 to 50 people. 2 complete churches that are totally paid for in response to Marta giving her pennies to God. I have told this a couple of times recently, and I already have 2 more new churches in the works in Mexico because of Marta's pennies for God. Young people, when you give your talent, if it's only one, if you give it back to God, God can do things that are out of this world with your talent. My question to you is, young people, what are you doing with God's talent? Families, what are you doing with God's talent? Children, are you willing to use your talent for God? He needs it. You can sing a song, you can help with the offering, you can pass out information about revival or some special service. Grandparents, what are you doing with your talent? You see, there comes a day when the master comes back and he says, okay, give me an account. And the only negative is when we don't use what he gave us. We sit on it. We guard it. We protect it. We say we're doing it for him. We don't want to embarrass his cause. But the only negative is if we don't use it. But if you're faithful, the answer is always, well done, good and faithful servant. Now, there's not a single person here. Did you hear me? Not a single person here that doesn't have something to offer God and the church. And God will take it and use it for his honor and glory. Father, you're the master. And you've gone away, but you said, I'm coming back. And the only instructions you gave us, he said, I want you to keep busy until I return. And when I return, I expect an account from you. Lord, help us to be faithful so that we can hear those words, well done, good and faithful servant. Enter into the joys of the Lord. Help us to use our talent for you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.